But nevertheless, it is a gigantically enthusiastic and knowledgeable and cheerful crowd. There's no other Grand Prix meeting in the world with an atmosphere like Silverstone's. I had a taste of that today when I went round with Damon Hill and Jacques Villeneuve in the Rolls-Royce in the Drivers' Parade. I've talked so often about people power, which Nigel Mansell used to tell me meant a second a lap to a driver if he was coming up through the field or winning the race. And Damon Hill has said much the same sort of thing. But I sat there today between the two of them, whilst the crowd's adulation was directed primarily at one man, Damon Hill. It really was a quite incredible experience to get these waves of clapping and shouting, horns. I have never seen so many Union flags in my life. But it is by no means a foregone conclusion that Damon Hill is going to win the Grand Prix, the British Grand Prix, for the second time in his career. He led in 1993 only to have an engine fail. He won in 1994. In 1995, he had that memorable coming together with Michael Schumacher when they were fighting for the lead. This year, of course, Damon Hill has got that commanding 25-point lead in the championship, having already won 6 of the 9 races. But his chief rival is his teammate. Your teammate is always the man that you want to beat first of all. His teammate is Canada's Jacques Villeneuve, who has come from Indy racing, the Indy champion of 1995, the man who won the Indy 500 last year. And getting into Formula One from another discipline is an incredibly difficult experience, but Villeneuve has taken to it like a duck to water, very nearly won his first Grand Prix, started from pole position at his first Grand Prix, and they are the two men who are on the front row of the grid. And they're the two men who, if form means anything, are going to be battling for the lead. But what about Michael Schumacher? And the cars are coming out onto the track now. They do a lap, and they can do more than one lap if they want to, provided they go through the pit lane, as the Benetton of Gerhard Berger is doing there, and do not go across the grid. Then they form up on the grid, and the question here today, of course, is can anybody hold a candle to Hill and Villeneuve? Well, Michael Schumacher, notwithstanding the problems that he had in the last 2 Grand Prix in France and Canada, can theoretically do so. He was a second off the pace in qualifying, and he wasn't all that quick. He was about the same time behind the fastest driver in the warm-up this morning, who was Mika Häkkinen, incidentally. Although that doesn't mean all that much, because the warm-up started in rather slippery conditions, dried out, and the fastest man was going to be the man who was there at the end of the session on slick tyres, which was Mika Häkkinen. So Schumacher is struggling, no doubt about that, and his teammate Eddie Irvine will be even more so. There is the scene at Silverstone with those 90,000 spectators and 90,000 cars from the look of it around the track. It's taken them 3 days, some of them, to take 3 days for the crowd to build up. They're all going to be trying to get away in one lump this evening, and it's going to take a very long, long time. But this really is the big one for the British enthusiast. Well, now, what about the others? Michael Schumacher's brilliance has overcome the problems of the Ferrari several times this season, and there have been some major problems. Mika Häkkinen, the Finnish driver in the McLaren Mercedes, is going better. Qualified the best that he's ever done this season in 4th position, about 9/10 of a second off the pace yesterday, ahead of Jean Alesi in 5th place and Rubens Barrichello in 6th position in the Jordan. The Jordan has got a tremendously powerful Peugeot engine, but the handling is not so good. The Mercedes engine in the McLaren is similarly extremely powerful, probably right up there with the rest of them. And you're watching now Jacques Villeneuve coming into 2nd position on the grid. We look down from the overhead camera, which gives such magnificent views of the racing. Now, you'll see what Silverstone is like when Jonathan takes us round the formation lap. The lap, incidentally, where Schumacher had his massive problem at the French Grand Prix, which took him out of the race before it had even begun. But Silverstone is a very difficult circuit to set the car up properly for, because there are so many different kinds of corners intermingled with straights of up to 190 miles an hour, and you just have to get a balance between the minimum drag for the fastest possible speed down the straights and the maximum downforce to help you get round the slow corners quickly. You've seen Villeneuve, how you look at Damon Hill. And as I said earlier on, Damon is a different man this season. He is laid back, confident, cheerful, totally relaxed, in command. But at Silverstone, the pressure has really been on him. This is what has brought out the very best in him. He hasn't cracked at all to the considerable crowd pressure, the people wanting autographs, the people wanting photographs, the people wanting to remind him that they went to school with him, the people who want to introduce their children to him. Double world champion, Michael Schumacher. In the background is Norbert Haug, who is the competition's chief of the Mercedes. And on his left is the top man of Mercedes, who's come over specially for the event, of course. He knows Michael Schumacher well from the past, because Michael used to be in the Mercedes-Benz sports car team, driving in races like Le Mans, where he did exceptionally well.
Damon, another year on and the same old magnificent atmosphere, isn't it?
It's tremendous. I've had such a great weekend up till now, and now I really have to do the most important bit, which is to win the race.
Is the feeling you've got on the grid now any different to the feeling you've had in the previous 3 or 4 years?
No, I think that it's extra special this time. There seems to be a bigger turnout than I've seen at a British Grand Prix, at least for a number of years anyway. And I know that everyone is very keen to see me do well, and I feel great at the moment. So it's going to be a very good race. It's going to be a very close race between myself and Jack. But you know, I really want to win this one.
Lovely moment this morning with the lap in the Silver Ghost with Murray and with Jacques. Did you appreciate having Murray there to talk you around the circuit?
Well, it was nice to have Murray there, just so that he could actually get a flavour of what it's like for a driver as well, because I don't think he'd appreciated quite how tremendous the crowd was until you get on the track and actually see everyone. And it's been a great weekend.
A couple of things to emphasise. First of all, your teammate is really up for this, isn't he?
Oh yeah, he wants to beat me. I mean, I think he's had enough of coming second, so he's pretty pumped up, and I'm going to have to fight damn hard to try and beat him. And
conditions today, do they put any question marks in the team's mind, in your mind?
No, not really. I think we've done most of our work. We've done a lot of testing here, so we know the place very well. And the race will come down to tactics. It'll be determined by traffic and tactics. I don't think there'll be much between myself and Jack.
You're not going to reveal anything about those tactics, but did they require a great deal of debate within the team?
Oh yeah, you know, I mean, the usual poring over data, and of course the added complication of the fact that we've never taken our eyes off what Michael and the rest of the cars are doing, but we're both in the same team, and so our strategies are known to each other, and it's more difficult to try and to outwit the other guy if he knows what you're doing.
Get it right and have another tremendous afternoon. Good luck, David.
Thank you very much.
That's Erwin Gollner, incidentally, in the background, in the white shirt, the man I was telling you about, Damon's trainer. The most experienced driver in Grand Prix racing at the present moment is Gerhard Berger, and there he is. This is his 119th Grand Prix, the great Austrian driver, following in the footsteps of Niki Lauda and world champion Jochen Rindt. Gerhard, having driven for Benetton before, for Ferrari twice, for McLaren, of course, Eddie Irvine getting closer to his Ferrari. It's been a dreadful struggle for Eddie, who joined Ferrari from the Jordan team, went to live in Italy, has made himself tremendously popular with the team. He's a fine driver, but the problem is that he has had not nearly enough testing to learn how to master the car.
Martin, this is a big one. British Grand Prix. Not a bad grid position either.
That's good. Fourth row. Car went well in practice. In the warm-up this morning I was sick. We look quite strong.
Weather forecast is good, no rain, we hope.
I don't care, same for everybody, to be honest. Whatever happens, happens.
Now, what's the Peugeot situation? Old engine, new engine?
We got the EV4. We bought a new one, especially for this morning. But no, we only qualify the EV5. We don't race it. So it's, but it's the engine we've raced all year. It's very, very reliable, good speed. We're fastest in the straight line again this morning.
Are you happy with the new Silverstone track, the new Stowe, for example?
Yeah, very much so. It's opened the circuit up a bit, and you know, there's some more work to be done over the winter to make the circuit even better. But it really looks beautiful today.
Well, let's hope we see you on the podium. Thank you, Martin.
Thanks, Tony.
Jonathan, I just do not believe Martin Brundle. He says he doesn't care whether it's wet or dry. Surely, surely, surely you want, if you're a driver, for the track conditions to be dry. I know it's the same for everybody, but who wants to be sitting in a car with great fountains of water being thrown up at them and lack of grip?
Well, I think somebody who thinks that they'll go better in those conditions, and we saw great evidence of that, of course, in Spain, when Michael Schumacher was in absolutely brilliant form. You know, in the wet, the car is less of an influence on the overall performance package between the car and driver, and people often wonder just how much of the performance of these combinations comes from the car and how much is the driver. And I can give you a little bit of an idea. If we look at the grid, we've got Damon Hill on pole position on that 1 minute 26.8, and at the back of the field we've got Pedro Lamy in the Minardi on 131.5, and that's Frenson there from the Sauber team. Now that's a 5-second gap, but if you put Lamy in Damon Hill's Williams, I suspect he'd be within about a second of Damon Hill, and Hill would probably only be perhaps 18th rather than 20th.
I've got David Coulthard, and I've got Alain Prost here as well. Alain, of course, last overseas driver to win this British Grand Prix. You were giving a few last words of advice, or I presume they were advice to David, of what sort of content? What were you telling him?
It was not really advice. I was just asking David how he find the car, because, you know, this morning we had a humid warm-up, and he was not very happy with the car, so now it's a bit better. I was just asking how it was feeling, you know. It looks okay. I'm happy.
Always looks okay. What was the team's verdict on the conditions you faced today?
Well, from this morning, of course, it's a little bit tricky, but I think everyone's probably quite happy with these conditions. It's cool, it's dry, and that'll make the tyres hold in there a bit better.
There's a feeling within the team, Alain, that things are turning round for McLaren now.
Yeah, it's getting much better. For sure, I'm a little bit disappointed for David's position on the grid, because I was expecting better. He had a very difficult practice. But the performance of the car is getting slowly better and better, and we hope we have a good performance today, because in the last few races we had a good reliability, and it's not easy, you know, to catch the leaders like the Williams, but if we are just behind them, that was exactly the target we had at the beginning of the season after 8 or 9 races, so that's where we are. So if we finish third, and if we can be in front of the Benetton and the Ferrari on this track, we're going to be very happy.
Okay. David, one last word. The feeling is you're composed, you're confident?
Yeah, I'm confident. I'm looking forward to making a good start and hopefully picking off a few before the first corner.
The boss needs another word. Ron over there. Good luck.
Only 2 drivers in the history of Formula One have won more than 3 World Championships. And little Alain Prost, who looks less like a racing driver than almost anyone I've ever seen, is one of them. He won 4 World Championships, and the great Juan Manuel Fangio won the other. But today, as with so many races in the past, strategy is going to be all important. We think we know how many stops a lot of people are going to be making, but we don't know how we're going to spread them. What do you think, Jonathan?
Well, I think the likelihood is that we'll see most of the drivers making 2 stops, but we could see some making 1. It's a 61-lap race, so if they made 2 stops, it'll be round about lap 20 for the first one, lap 40 for the second. Exactly when they do stop is going to be what tactics are all about, because as we've seen so often, it's the pit stops that are the mechanism for overtaking, and it could benefit that man, Jacques Villeneuve. If they're going to make 1 stop, it will be round about lap 30, plus or minus sort of 3 or 4 laps. That's the kind of thing that we should expect. But I thought what was something that's quite interesting was that Damon Hill mentioned in his interview that strategies are known to each other for his people, and I just wonder whether he and Villeneuve are running different strategies.
As the drivers are
all ready
the
then
grid,
for
ready for
the national anthem.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Queen.
round 10 of the World Championship to many people, but it's not round 10 to anybody who is British. It is the British Grand Prix at Silverstone. With such a long tradition as an event, I think the first ever British Grand Prix was in 1923, and it was revived, of course, after the war, and then the World Championship began in 1950. We've seen so many great races here at Silverstone.
And I think we're going to see a great one in the 1996 Grand Prix. It's going to come in two levels, I think. Right at the front, I think the Williams cars are going to be in a class of their own, with Jacques Villeneuve being determined in qualifying here to try and pit Damon Hill to the pole position. It didn't happen. I know that in Canada it was Hill who was on the pole, and Villeneuve was very disappointed not to take the pole position on his home Grand Prix, so he thought he'd try and return the compliment, but it didn't work out. But these two are going to be close, there's no doubt about it, although I do think Hill will have the edge. We talked about strategy before. It's very much part of Formula One. It can be a little bit tedious sometimes, but it is part of the fascination. The bruising that you get as a driver is amazing, and there's Gerhard Berger having his hands bandaged up. That's not because there's anything wrong with them, certainly not yet. It's because after an hour and 40 minutes of being pummeled around in the cockpit with your knuckles clearing the carbon fibre coaming by just millimetres, the banging and knocking that goes on just takes its toll. So that's a pretty standard sort of thing to happen. But I did mention before that when Damon was talking about strategies, and that's Martin Brundle's adoption of the fashionable breathing, the nose bandage, just to increase the breathing. Whether or not it works or not, I really don't know, but if they think it does, then that's probably the most important thing. And it may just be that Damon and Jacques Villeneuve are on different strategies, but behind those two, who, as I said, I do think will pull out, we're going to see a battle royal, I'm quite sure, between Michael Schumacher and Mika Hakkinen, with John Alesi in the Benetton, and Rubens Barrichello very close together. Four cars who will be close, and I must say that Mika Hakkinen's qualifying performance in fourth, this is his best qualifying performance of the year so far. He's progressively improved his form. The McLaren, we're looking at one now, that's David Coulthard's version, is really benefiting from the changes that have been made by the Woking team. They know they've been behind, they haven't been happy with their performance. Eddie Irvine, well, he's not happy with his performance either, although you might not think that looking at his cheerful face, but then that's just Eddie really. He's very able to cope with struggling, and being number 2 to Michael Schumacher is a struggling position. Ferrari have not been able to test at this circuit because they're based in Italy, and Monza is where they can test. That's where the regulations are. And whilst what testing does go on is largely done by Michael Schumacher, poor Eddie just has to make do with doing little more than the actual races, and that's why he doesn't do too well. Triple world champion Jackie Stewart escorts his guests along the pit lane as usual. And Stewart still follows the sport very closely, and of course will be entering it himself next year when Stewart Grand Prix takes the tracks at the start of the 1997 season.
Well, there's a lot of top people here. You saw Martin Brundle darting forward to say hello to the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Kenneth Clarke. Earlier today, Tony Blair, the leader of the opposition, was taken around the track by Damon Hill. I think he found it a pretty stimulating experience. It wasn't in a Williams Renault, I hasten to say, but Heinz Harald Frentzen doing what they all do at this stage of the race, taking on as much liquid as they possibly can.
And that's Patrick Head on the left. We can just see his face. He's the technical director of the Williams team, very much alongside Frank Williams, the man for making Williams Grand Prix into the incredibly successful team that it is, a team that have won 1 in 4 Grand Prix that they've ever started. Talking through with Damon Hill how to run the race. You can see the pipe going into Damon's helmet. That's where his drink will be sucked up through. On the front of his visor, he's got the rip-off, the thin plastic films, we call them rip-offs, and he'll be literally ripping those off. He's probably got a couple of them on that visor as they become peppered with oil, with bits of dirt as the race goes on, to maintain a reasonably clear field of vision.
That's a view you'll be seeing a lot from different cars, because Martin Brundle has one of those cameras, Coulthard, Hakkinen, Villeneuve, Damon Hill that you're looking through now. John Alesi's got one, as has his teammate Gerhard Berger, and Eddie Irvine and Michael Schumacher, the 2 Ferraris. And it gives you a wonderful view of the front wheels, the driver's hands, how they change gear, how they line up their cars for the corners. And Jacques Villeneuve, who always wears a driving suit about 4 times too big for him, looks most peculiar when he's walking about, but that's the way he likes it, and that's the important thing.
And we saw on the tyres of Villeneuve's car, we can just see it, those covers on the back tyres, we saw little boxes on them too. I'm sure we'll have another glance. Those boxes maintain the temperature. There we are, the boxes on top of the tyre. These tyre blankets have to be kept at a thermostatically controlled temperature, because the tyres, A, have their optimum grip at about 80 degrees, but secondly, if the temperature is not up of the tyre, then neither will the pressure be either. And bearing in mind that half of the movement up and down, tiny though it is, half of the movement up and down from these cars actually comes from the squashing of the tyres rather than the springs. And if those tyre pressures aren't right, then the springing will not be right either. Michael Schumacher, and you can see he's got two of those rip-offs on. You see a little flag on each side, or a little bit of bent round plastic. He'll pull off one side first, maybe after 15 laps or so, and then pull off the second part. Schumacher's got his work cut out, there's no doubt about it. This year's Ferrari's been a bit disappointing. It's not aerodynamically particularly efficient, which means that it doesn't produce as much downforce as the Williams car. It doesn't have as much grip around the corners, and it's not quite as fast down the straights either. But Schumacher's almost superhuman genius has really hauled that Ferrari up. He's been on pole position this year already 3 times, and this is a difficult circuit. This is more of a power circuit, frankly. You need to have a very effective car aerodynamically too. You can see the fan above his helmet. Above that helmet there is where the air goes into the engine, and there's a fan there just blowing it through. Right, but let's have a look at Silverstone circuit. This is a 3-mile track, and through the start-finish line, gentle curve, they'll be up to 180 miles an hour in 6th gear before coming down through to 3rd gear for Copse Corner. Look at the big runoff area on the left-hand side, 120 now into 4th, into 5th, into 6th. Now we're coming to one of the most exciting parts of any Grand Prix circuit in the world. 6th gear, 170 miles an hour, down to 5th for Beckett's. Down to 4th, 120 miles an hour. Now a good exit here is vitally important, and you can see on the inset onboard camera that long straight pulling up to 190 miles an hour going down to Stowe Corner, and this is the best overtaking point on the circuit. Nothing is easy, believe me. Flicking down to 4th gear, 120 miles an hour, out wide. Look how much the car sweeps from side to side as he comes from 155 down to 2nd gear and 60 miles an hour now. There, and looking back at the camera, that's the little blob mounted on front of his coaming. Club Corner, they go through, up through the gears to 180 miles an hour in 6th before Abbey. Not really much of an overtaking point here, down to 3rd gear, 80 miles an hour. Look how they use the curbs, that's quite normal. Where you can use the curbs and it doesn't upset the car, that's better. This next corner is taken almost flat out in 5th gear at 155. This was where Hill came up the inside of Schumacher last year, and it ended in tears in that gravel trap on the right. Brooklands 60 miles an hour, up to 3rd. Luffield 1. This next one leads on to the start-finish straight. Very important to get a fast exit here, because as they come out at 120 miles an hour past the grid, they're already doing 170 miles an hour by that start-finish line, and into this corner here. But we're back onto the first corner of the track. That's the Club Corner, and that again is a potential overtaking point. But overtaking is so very, very difficult on the tracks these days. We don't see a lot of overtaking on the circuit, and you know, anybody that's driven on an indoor kart circuit can appreciate this point, that your foot is flat to the floor virtually the whole time. Villeneuve's foot's going to be flat to his floor. So's Damon Hill. We saw him just concentrating, living through, running through the thought processes of lapping that circuit. And as a driver, I used to sit on the grid. You mentally think through the first few laps. You think through the gears you're going to be using. You know it so well. You're rehearsing what's going to be happening. And this is very much the calm before the storm now. You're on your own in your cockpit. There is nobody talking to you. You are silent. You're gathering your thoughts. You know that the next hour and a half are going to be absolutely crucial.
Welcome all around the world to Silverstone for round 10 of the 1996 Formula One World Championship, the British Grand Prix. I know that there are people in Australia, in Canada, Jacques Villeneuve's home country, in South Africa, and many, many other places, all watching this race as it unfolds. It offers a fascinating scenario to us with the two Williams drivers who have dominated the season, because already they are on the grid, the front row of the grid, for the 5th time. Damon Hill or Jacques Villeneuve have jointly occupied the front row of the grid for those 5 races, and Villeneuve was in pole position in Australia. Mika Häkkinen well up, it's the highest he's been. Jean Alesi only 5th on the grid in the Benetton, very disappointing, and his teammate Berger is in 7th position. Martin Brundle behind his teammate, and Coulthard is behind his teammate, as is Eddie Irvine. Schumacher 3rd, Irvine in 10th position. Heinz-Harald Frentzen is ahead of Johnny Herbert, both in Saubers, and Katayama, unusually, very unusually, in the Tyrrell, is ahead of his Finnish teammate Mika Salo. Jos Verstappen is driving the footwork Hart. Parnis and Deniz are well down in the Ligier. They don't have any testing here at Silverstone, and that has delayed them. And there are only 20 starters for the British Grand Prix, because the 240 Ford-powered cars of the Brazilian team failed to qualify. They're having all sorts of financial problems and were not able to get their engine supply finalised until qualifying yesterday, by which time they had not done any setting up work at all, and there was really never, there was never any question of them qualifying, and sure enough, they did not do so. So just about 2.5 minutes now to do the start of the formation lap. And of course, nothing ever happens on the formation lap. It's just a parade lap round to the grid, unless, of course, you are Michael Schumacher at the French Grand Prix, when the unthinkable, the unbelievable happened. A piston collapsed in the engine, and the double world champion Michael Schumacher failed ignominiously even to start the race. Well, I spent the whole of Thursday morning with Schumacher and with Eddie Irvine and with Jean Todt, the Ferrari team director, to say that they were not sad and disheartened would not be true. They are, and they were, but they say they put in hand the necessary changes to the procedures at Ferrari to make sure, they hope, that there is no repetition of what happened so embarrassingly to their team in Canada and France. And they will have been straining every nerve to avoid it here, because Luca de Montezemolo, the boss of Ferrari, and even more important, Giovanni Agnelli, the head of Fiat, were here to show solidarity with the team on Thursday, and that is a very important move. Ferrari is all important in Italy, and they will not want anything to go wrong here.
As we look at these cars, you'll see lots of odd little shapes of wings and aerodynamic surfaces on them, and this is because downforce is just desperately important with these cars. If you take a corner that a normal road car can take at 60 miles an hour, a Formula One car can take that corner at 130 miles an hour. But take all the wings off, take the downforce off, and despite the tyres and suspension, it would only do something like 85 miles an hour. So much comes from the aerodynamics. Each side of the car, you can just see it on Schumacher's, that's called a barge board. That's either side of where you might imagine his legs to be, that curved triangular shaped structure. That just stabilizes the airflow, and it's just one of various little appendages. You'll also see how high the noses of these cars are. And this is a fashion that Benetton started about 3 years ago. The driver's feet actually sit higher up than his bottom by about 6 inches, and that helps the airflow to be smooth over those front wings and allow the cars to produce more downforce. Now, they're going to be pulling away in a moment for what's called the formation lap. This is obviously not the race start, and interesting to look at the tyres. Now, you see a fine white band around the tyres of Schumacher's red Ferrari and Alesi's Benetton behind that. And that fine white band means they are new tyres. Damon Hill lights up the tyres. He's practicing his start to see what it's like there as they come around. And this is the time when they need to warm up the tyres. They're already in the blankets, but they still need to work them hard. They need to warm up the brakes. There's nothing they can do about that sitting on the grid, because until those brakes are up to 200 or 300 degrees, they won't work properly either. Sweeping through that left into the Beckett section, this is this awesome corner. There's 6 gear through that first one at 160 miles an hour, down to 5th for 130 miles now, that left, then the right-hander, and you can see the markings, the black markings of where the line of the cars going over and over again picks up. Longest straight here, This is the 190 miles an hour point. You see the change in colour, the darker surface. That's where it's been resurfaced there through Stowe Corner. The gravel on the outside showing you how safe Formula One is now, these big long runoff areas. Now when we come round to the start, this is Club Corner. The start is going to be one of the most crucial parts of the race in terms of determining who is going to do what. The qualifying was desperately important, but in terms of starts, some drivers start well and some don't. Now, Damon Hill starts pretty well. The real blinding starts seem to come from British drivers. In fact, Martin Brundle will normally make up a couple of places, so he's 8th there. That might mean 6th. Johnny Herbert does well too. David Coulthard's made some absolute flyers, but the one significantly that doesn't tend to start well is Michael Schumacher, and that's not so much Schumacher. I think it's more due to the Ferrari. So you can expect, I think, to see maybe Schumacher be overhauled by a Laces, Benetton. That could be possible. Mika Hakkinen has variable starts, and as they peel around, this is this tight, twisty infield section, only about 70 miles an hour through these corners. When they come to take their places on the grid, watch for the cars apparently all following a line, and then suddenly at the last minute swerving across to one side or the other to take their final place. That's because, believe it or not, this track is only clean on the racing line. There are little bits of dust around that if you get them on the tyres, they will just lose crucial grip, so the drivers try and stay on that racing line till the very last minute before peeling off and taking their place on the grid. And that's what Damon's doing there, you see. He's moved across. Look at the track on the right. It's dark, it's black, there's more rubber there. The left-hand side is not so much, and that's why Damon lit those tyres up, tyre smoking them to get the black lines down and find some more grip.
Michael Schumacher has a new clutch in the Ferrari. He will be hoping for a better start than he's had in the past. But at the bottom of your picture, you saw Damon Hill. Alongside him, Jacques Villeneuve. It's a long wait on the front row of the grid for Damon Hill while the rest of them get into line. Look for the lights, and when all the lights go out, the race will begin. The 1996 British Grand Prix, and it is